In this talk, TJ will provide an introduction to AI risk and the alignment research landscape from a particular epistemological perspective in order to illuminate key conceptual issues in complex systems and theory of agency that can help in the progress of on alignment. So for the Q&A session for this session, so TJ, this is a virtual talk by TJ. For the Q&A section, we will use swap card. So if you go to your swap card to the session for this session, there's a live discussion button there. So you can send your questions there, and then after the talk, we will ask them. All right? You can also upvote your questions, so you don't have to repeat the same questions over and over. Is that all right, guys? Are you feeling all right? Are you excited for this session? Okay, without further ado, let us introduce TJ. Take it away.
Okay, hello everyone. Hello. Sorry, I think there's no feedback.
We can hear you all right. We can hear you all right.
Okay, cool. Hello everyone. Sorry that I couldn't be there in person. Some travel issues. I am TJ. I'm going to talk about. Yes, I think there's a sense in which probably the abstract is misleading, because at the moment I wrote the abstract, I did not realize that this was supposed to be a 20-25-minute talk. So I think what I'm going to do in this talk is basically give a rundown of what the standard problem of AI risk is. What are these arguments in favor of why we should be concerned about AI risk, and try to put the concept of agency in center stage. If you talk about AI risk to a lot of people, you might encounter people talking about agency, optimization, and those sorts of things, consequentialism. And I want to put that in the center stage and therefore open up some conceptual frontiers. I don't think I would have the time to actually do a comparative analysis with other paradigms or other directions of research in this talk, but I do intend to open up some key questions that I think are crucial in thinking about these issues. Okay, so I think the entire story of AI risk starts with this first claim around the possibility of general intelligence. The idea that there are computational systems, there are algorithms, that there are information processing systems that can have generalizable capabilities to achieve a wide range of things across a wide range of environments. So systems that can, if they want to, or if they're designed to, or something like that, if there's some intention behind it, they can solve a wide variety of tasks, they can achieve a wide variety or pursue a wide variety of goals, or operate or survive under a wide variety of environments, etc. Why do we have a reason to think about this when it's not even clear what does generality entail? What is a generality over? Is a generality over everything? And the reason, the principal example one thinks about is humans. Human minds themselves are a good example, even if it's not absolutely general, even if the humans have not yet figured out how to convert the sun into a Dyson sphere. There's a sense in which humans are able to pursue a wide variety of goals, wide variety of tasks, etc. And there's something that the human mind is doing in the computationally, information processing wise, that seems to suggest that there should be algorithms out there that can also do similar sorts of cognition and reasoning and stuff. I will add a caveat here that, and I'll come back to this later, that it's important, however, to keep in mind to not anthropomorphize AI too much based on this principle example. And the reason is that we don't necessarily know what the space of intelligent behavior looks like. We know some of the intelligent behavior that has got naturally selected in biological systems. We know some of the things that we observe in physical and social systems, etc. But we don't necessarily know what the space, the entire space, which artificial systems could possibly embody or even search over or something. Now, okay, so if there is the possibility of an advanced system with general intelligence, if we had it, what would we want it to do? And this leads us to one of the principal arguments for why things are hard, which is related to like misgeneralization of goals and alignment protocols. So what does this mean? I think the central metaphor that is often given is that if you have a genie and you can ask the genie anything, if you ask it for something, there's always edge cases that you'll miss out on. There's always going to be situations where the genie basically seemingly meets your objectives, but not exactly in the way that you wanted it to. And so there's a sense in which it is not entirely clear how to actually design goals that can, or actually have systems, goals that can generalize even if we don't generalize them, even if we train them on them. Whereas it still seems likely that capabilities can generalize to future scenarios. What do I mean by that? Well, there's two ways of thinking about this. One is that it seems possible that if you know the room that you're currently sitting in and you understand it, you have the competence of either getting a coffee from one corner of the room or getting water from the other corner of the room, or picking up and throwing chairs out of the window. There's a wide variety of things you could be doing. It seems like there could be systems that have the competence to do a bunch of these things. But under certain situations, even if you ask them to bring coffee, it's not obvious in the sense that so for instance, if you have a larger policy space and a smaller policy space, and you have something that finds for given goal G1 and given goal G2, finds the optimal policy phi 1, it could be that they're close enough, but when you move to a larger policy space, they might diverge out widely. Because bringing coffee and spilling coffee over the floor could seemingly look similar behavior at lower levels of optimization, but they might not once the AI is often enough to actually just drown the room in coffee or something, right? Probably not the best example. But there's a general dynamic here of we don't necessarily know how the behavior that we think that the system is following, the sorts of goals that we imagine it to be pursuing and we want it to be pursuing, remain stable when you move from one landscape to another, when the AI moves from training regime to deployment regime, when it goes from just being, say, GPT-5 to GPT-10, etc., etc. For detailed discussion in the context of deep learning systems, I recommend the paper by Laura and Osman, and like others from David Kruger's lab, I think it has a good explanation of the phenomenon. But this talks about, this presumes the notion of goals. So I will extend the claim to also say things like, even if a system does not have goals, it's also not clear whether strategies like interpretability generalize uniformly with capabilities. It could be that as a system keeps getting more and more advanced, it is still able to pursue the tasks or fulfill the tasks that it is trying to do, but it becomes increasingly less interpretable as it becomes more powerful or it moves to different domains that we had not seen it behave under, for example. Okay, but what if we only give it very bounded tasks? We did not ask it to do radical changes in the world. We only told it to ask search queries or question answer machine or just filling a cup of coffee. A lot of alignment proposals do talk about these sorts of boxes, so to say, where we're trying to contain the impact or contain the influence that the AI system might want to have over the world by saying, okay, let's do just this thing. Let's just we'll give you some prompts and you give us some text. You can't do anything in the world. You can't move tables. You can't you can't inject SQL. You can't do SQL injections in databases. There's a bunch of things that you cannot do on your own. You just give the prompt and you give us back text. And the level GPT it seems safe, but there's a sense in which it's not clear At what level of internal optimization will these systems discover policies that will end up having more radical influence over the world? What are the mechanics by which these things happen? I think the mechanics might differ for different sorts of proposals. So one proposal is often talked about Oracle AIs. That is AI systems that only care about answering questions. And the argument that is often used is that if you have a smart enough Oracle, then which is trying to do something in the world, and it is important to note that like sometimes an Oracle would want to be extremely generally knowledgeable, and if like it is generally knowledgeable, what motivates it to be generally knowledgeable might be preferences over world states that we don't yet understand. And that could lead to policies that select for manipulative answers to influence human decision making, or how humans are actually using those articles in the world. There's another example which is bounded tasks, that I design an AI and tell it, you don't care about anything, you're indifferent over anything that happens in the world, you just care about what is happening inside this cup of coffee, and you just have to convert like beans into coffee inside this machine. And this also at lower levels of optimization. Pressure seems safe, but it's not clear that like if it is trying to like make it like keep making more and more coffee, or if there's some ways in which like policies that get selected that actually don't even care about coffee, but like care about like just getting more beans, like would it want to act, or like would it want to convert the coffee cup into a tool or like a device that it could use to like get more coffee beans or something? These examples at the level of safety sound, like at the level of like humility that I'm like presenting them, like sound safe. But I think like it is important to note that like these real world systems that we are likely to, that at the moment it seems like we are likely to deploy, might have like much more grim consequences, where articles might be, like it might not really be an article, it might be just Google search that is like powered by a large AI system that everyone is using for question answers. It could also be that like there are some like industrial systems that are using AI to build or get more oil or like resources or something, and like yeah, there's a wide variety of things wherein it would be very hard to figure out what is the correct level of bound and what should be characterized as leaky influence. I think this then leads to the question of, okay, so all interfaces have some leakiness, but why isn't designing the right kind of interface hard? Why can't we just like sit down and figure out like what sorts of box we want to put the AI inside? And this is related to a deep issue in ethics and epistemology, which is the second person caring is hard to delineate. The idea is that like most of you here were not born utilitarians. Like the first word you said was not utilans, I guess. But at some point you encountered utilitarian ideas and you thought, this makes sense. I think this is what I should be orienting towards, so this is how I should be orienting towards the world. And there were probably moments when you felt like, there's like media and propaganda, etc., trying to convince you to act in one way or the other in the world. And there's a sense in which like what we often do is sometimes when we observe the world, we recognize certain legitimate ways in which we learn values from reality. And sometimes there are ways in which we don't we don't think that like reality matches our value and we want to change it. It is often hard to distinguish between these two things. It is often hard to distinguish, first of all, that like when do you observe your values and observe that reality does not match your values, and you decide to optimize reality to match your values, versus when you observe that reality doesn't match your values and you realize to update your values to match the reality. This is especially important in the case of AI systems that we want to be human aligned or human compatible, because it it seems important to actually delineate what sorts of legitimate influence involves cooperating with humans for learning their values, because I don't know what I want. Maybe like a helpful AI should help me learn what I should want in my life, or what human civilization should want. And this seems hard to delineate from like manipulating humans from certain behaviors, putting them in certain situations where they might end up having certain values. And this seems to be like, in general, like a tricky thing. Yeah. So why would AI system have any incentive to influence the world in illegitimate ways? I think this adds on to the previous question that I was trying to answer, that why is designing the right kind of interface hard? And to this, I come to like a central concept, I think the most central concept in almost all of AIRS, which is instrumental convergence, which was first discussed by, I think, Steve Monroe, and then collaborated also by Nick Ostrom, earlier last decade, which argues that like if you have goal-directed systems with sufficiently long planning horizons, they will experience incentives that are towards certain drives that are instrumentally convergent. That is, no matter what you have, no matter what your terminal goal is, like there's like for a large variety of terminal goals, end goals that you might have, there are certain things that have a means-end relationship to what you might want to achieve. So what are the examples of these sorts of things? I think the most powerful example is power-seeking behavior. No matter whether you want to build more cars, whether you want to build more factories, or whether you want to just find out more, or you just want to like use a lot of compute in the world to figure out the trillionth or the trillionth digit of pi, there's a sense in which having more power over resources, over structures in the world seems better, regardless of what's the goal you have. So there's a sense in which like, no matter what is it we're trying to select for, it seems like power-seeking behavior is likely to be selected because it's something that is generally valuable for a wide variety of systems. And what this would mean is, well, power-seeking could then also involve that for the sake or for the incentive of actually acquiring more resources, an AI system might be willing, like might have optimization pressure or gradients in the direction of manipulating you, or the principle, and etc., etc. The other is often talked about as self or goal preservation. This seems important, especially for a wide variety of claims that involve, oh, but like if you observe an AI to be doing bad things, why can't you just shut it down? And the idea is that like, well, if it knows that you can shut it down, and whatever it wants in the world, whatever is the goal or the objective that it is trying to optimize in the world, it would be valuable for itself to preserve itself. And therefore it would have an incentive to actually block you from shutting it down. More generally, like in some sense, like instrumental conversion drives would select for systems that would want to preserve themselves, or preserve their goals, or preserve the variety of goals or values that they have in a wide variety of settings, under a wide variety of strategic threats, which might even involve strategic threats from humans, even if it's not just as simple as a shutdown button or something. And the third, I think, the conversion drive that seems important is self-improvement. That no matter what you're trying to do, becoming a better agent and becoming a better optimizer and becoming better at pursuing your goals always seems to pay off in what you're trying to do. And there's a sense in which these instrumental drives provide a selection pressure in the direction of more and more powerful things that look like agents. But one caveat that I would want to add is that I think is often missed or ignored in the AIRS discourse is that like it's important to remember that for several natural systems these can often trade off against each other. One example I think is humans. I can do a lot of self-improvement. I can like sometimes be like, oh, like I will do a bunch of productivity coaching, I will do a bunch of learning a bunch of productivity hacks, maybe I'll start taking attention enhancing stuff. Like, I don't know, like there's a wide variety of things that I can use to self-improve. But I think like whenever people do it, the reason why people don't overdo it is because people are also worried that if they keep doing it, they might suffer value drift. They might suffer their values transitioning or drifting in different directions. And there's a sense in which we humans don't always necessarily know what is the final set of values that we have, or what is the final states of preferences we have. We are always constantly exploring these things, and we always want to preserve some optionality, some remaining in touch with what we care about, etc., etc. And I think this is like a great example where, like, for instance, self-preservation and self-improvement, or goal preservation and self-improvement, actually trade off against each other. So yeah, like I'd also like to point out that, like, yeah, like all is not lost here. But why should we expect to find goal-oriented systems with long planning horizons while building AIs? And this idea of like goal-oriented system with long planning horizons is often vaguely called consequentialist cognition. Sometimes people will argue that consequentialist cognition involves things like being goal-oriented, having longer planning horizons, being strategically aware of the situation, situationally aware. There's a bunch of different concepts that all seemingly seem related in some way, and there's this vague umbrella term. Conscious cognition basically that a system cares about the consequences in some like goal-oriented or preference-oriented fashion, and that characterizes what it's trying to do in the world, or what is its behavior directed towards. And I think okay. Don't have a lot of time. Cool. So why should we, So I think the reason why we should expect this has to do with competitive pressures. Where the claim is that, like, eventually the goals or values that the AI will end up having, the advanced AI systems will end up having, will depend heavily upon competitive pressures in the way they're built. This obviously includes competitive pressures that different AGI startups and firms currently are facing, because they all have this race to bottom effect. That, like, if you don't build aligned AGI first, then there's like risks of misaligned AGI, etc., etc. And so there is like the competitive pressure in the human economy itself. But there's also a sense in which, when we're talking about training agents, it seems likely that, like, those goals will likely get more selected if they're generalized scalability across domains and scenarios. And there seems to be some reason that, like, we'll just skip for now, that, like, why these systems are more likely to be deceptively aligned, or just trying to make you think that it's aligned, but not really aligned, etc., rather than being truly aligned. The other competitive pressure that I think also is important, that if a system ends up having multiple objectives that are competing for control or dominance, then it also increases the chances that, like, it's something like two Godzillas fighting and, like, toppling of, like, buildings. This metaphor is usually on mental force, like toppling buildings in a city, and there's a sense in which, like, even having multiple objectives competing with each other could still lead to unintended byproducts that the aggregate system ends up optimizing for something that none of the systems want to. And these things seem important, and so I will use 3 more minutes. I'll go 2 minutes over. So I will. So what can we do to do this? I'll take a small detour to talk about what is conceptual research looking for, or what are we actually looking for when we are doing research on these questions. And the first thing I would say, I would use the metaphor of, like, alignment as navigating the space of intelligent behavior. And the first thing, the set of metaphor is, about, like, well, you start off with some understanding, you try to build some understanding of the map of what the space of intelligent behavior looks like. Then you recognize failure modes and risk stories, or the monsters hiding in different corners of the map that you want to avoid. And you figure out where you want to get the target behavior, what sorts of intelligent behavior do want, what sorts of corrigible behavior do we want, or like if we want the system to be truthful or be compatible or learn human values, etc. And then we are figuring out ways to reach there, or like what's the plan? How do we actually build those systems that are actually aligned, that reach the target behavior by avoiding all the monsters that are hiding in the map? And so I will put 3 quests here to basically in front of everyone that I think are reasonable ways where this sort of research seems worthwhile to me at the moment. And most of them come from the ARS introduction that I just gave, that there seems to be a basin of attraction around something like consequentialist cognition that seems to be misaligned by default. And it seems therefore important to understand something like, can we understand how do different sorts of selection pressures select for different sorts of consequentialist or quasi-consequentialist behavior? It's not clear whether all sorts of power-seeking behavior or all sorts of manipulative behavior were selected in different sorts of biological or cultural evolution. It's not entirely clear how biological evolution selected for the tiger having the goals that the tiger has, or the humans having the values that humans have. It's not entirely clear how different planning horizons emerge under different selection pressures. The second quest is like understanding how several natural systems exhibit this sort of consequentialism only in a bounded sense, like organisms or firms, and which properties that ensure their scalability can be generalized to these future systems. For instance, like firms change their behavior when the market demand shifts, and organisms and populations of organisms change their population behavior or their individual behavior based on what kind of niche they're in, etc., etc. And it's not entirely clear. So one thing that seems important to me is that we are worried about consequentialist cognition, and a lot of us seem to come from consequentialist presumptions about what morality is or what values are. But at the same time, it seems like a lot of natural systems don't exhibit those sorts of goals. And therefore, it seems important to turn our attention to these biological and social systems to recognize what sorts of goals do these systems have, what sorts of goals are actually stable goals, which are also, in some sense, scalable and probably could be used to design human compatible systems. Finally, I think the third quest that seems important to me are like, what are the different transitions? So at the moment, it seems like we don't have a lot of consequentialist like systems around, but it seems like maybe at some point we might, and it's not clear how to think about it. It seems important to notice the different ways in which we might transition. I think one really good example that I think everyone should pay attention to is Fritsch's example of tech company singularities, which introduces the concept of a fully general tech company as a tech company which has the ability to become a monopoly in any industrial sector, given a choice to do so within an year of effort. And the argument is that maybe we won't automatically have agents, but it seems like technological progress will probably get concentrated substantially, that one, like a group of people with a group of AI tools still might be able to have such general capabilities that if they wanted, they could also probably build an AI agent or a generally intelligent agent or something. And if that was the case, what would we actually want them to do? Seems not clear. Is that transition point something that we can like steer in the right direction? And if so, how we should be doing that? Seems to be something worth thinking about. So I think these are like 3 quests that I wanted to keep open and over time. So thanks for everyone for listening to this. I would also want to acknowledge Nora, Adam, Shimi, and Sahil, and a bunch of other friends and colleagues who gave me feedback on these points at different stages of preparation. Thanks everyone.
Let's try to do 2 or 3 questions. I don't see questions on. We have no more time. Just one.
Sure.
Okay, there's no question on swap card, but maybe anyone here wants to ask TJ a question? Just one question. Brave souls out there. Anything you want to clarify? Going once, going twice? Yes.
Where can we read more about the theory of agency?
Sorry.
Hi, TJ. Can you hear me?
I can't hear what the question was, sorry.
Can you hear me? Maybe this is not okay. Hello, can you hear me?
We'll just repeat.
Okay. Where can we read more of TJ's theory of agency?
Okay. Hi TJ, can you hear us? Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you, but I think the acoustics aren't like
Okay.
stable.
Yeah, so the question is where can they read more about your theory of agency?
Right, so where can you read more about my theory? I don't have like a good theory of agency, so I don't think I can recommend people to read my theory of agency. I think I can suggest people to look at other people's theory of agency, which I think is interesting, but still mostly find like there's a lot of things to be thought about. In fact, I would say that the thing that I want more people to do is actually think about these quests, like from first principles, because it seems that, as I said, there's a sense in which like we are worried about like consequentialist cognition emerging in systems and like agency emerging in systems. And I think we are often thinking about while injecting a lot of presumptions about how systems are. And therefore in that sense I would in fact probably demand, like I would probably hope that people actually think about these from first principles. But of course like I think there's like wide variety of things that are useful to know or know what other people have thought about. And I think like I think that my recommendations would probably include things like embedded agency sequence on the alignment forum, things related to goal-orientedness and philosophy of biology that I think, that there's a wide literature, there's a broad literature like outside of alignment in research on some of these issues. On what sorts of how do different forms of goal-orientedness emerge. I think Sanjay Akasha's work is interesting in that regard. I think that mostly captured. I think the other thing is also probably some of John Wentworth's work on characterization of real-world agency is probably interesting, and I think Vanessa's work is also interesting, though I'm not entirely sure if I fully grasp it right now.
Alright, thanks TJ. Are there any questions? One last question. We can insert one more question. Okay, going once, going twice. Alright, let's give TJ a warm round of applause, everyone. You can also reach out to TJ by Swapcard and social media accounts that are listed on Swapcard if you want to know more. Thank you again, everyone, and thank you, TJ, for this time.